99% players are losing in Clash Royale because their deck sucks, and you are probably one of them. But here's the good news for you, building a deck is not hard, and in this video I'm going to teach you exactly how to build your own deck for every win condition in Clash Royale. Royal Giant. The Royal Giant is a 6 elixir tank that shoots cannonballs from a range. The purpose of Royal Giant decks is to outcycle your opponent's counters to get damage. So, the first rule of building a Royal Giant deck is that it shouldn't be too expensive. Now, the Royal Giant is countered by cards like P.E.K.K.A, Mini P.E.K.K.A, Prince, etc. Since these cards can't be taken out by spells, you always need to have the Fisherman in your deck. The Fisherman can pull troops away from your Royal Giant so that he can get a few extra shots on the tower. The Royal Giant can also be countered by swarms, like Skeleton Army or Goblin Gang. So now you need something to counter the swarms. A spell like the Log, Rage or Arrows can do a pretty good job. Since most decks have more than one swarm card, adding a Spirit card can be really helpful. An Electro Spirit or Ice Spirit can help reset units and also counter swarms like bats. Your final offensive card should be a big spell to take care of buildings trying to kill your Royal Giant. Don't opt for spells like Rocket or Poison. They're too slow and the building can counter the Royal Giant in the meantime. Instead, use instant spells like Lightning, Earthquake or Fireball. Now that your offense is sorted, we need to add cards for defense. First of all, you need a mini tank which can help you counter opponent troops and also add some pressure on offense. Cards like Royal Ghost, Monk, Skeleton King or even a Knight fit really well for this role. You also need a card that deals high damage to counter both air and ground troops. Cards like Hunter, Wizard, Executioner or even the Witch are a good choice for this. If you have the evolution of these cards, make sure to use it. And lastly, a Swarm card is needed to tank critical hits from cards and distract enemy troops. Use Skeletons if you want a faster cycle on offense, else you can use Guards or Goblin Gang if you want to be a bit safer on defense. That's how you can build your own Royal Giant deck that actually works. Graveyard. The Graveyard is one of the strongest win conditions in the game. It keeps spawning skeletons in a circular radius for 9 seconds. Since it's a spell, you can deploy it anywhere in the arena. A Graveyard deck requires a lot of patience to play. Graveyard is not that strong if you play it solo. You will need a mini tank to absorb hits while your Graveyard deals damage. Usually a Knight and Valkyrie fit this spot perfectly well. They are cheap and can deal good damage, both on offense and defense. If you have the evolved versions of these cards, then use them definitely. Graveyard decks will always need splash damage cards to counter swarms and defend against enemy troops. Cards like Ice Wizard, Baby Dragon, Executioner, Witch and Bowler are great picks. Use any 2 of these cards. Splash damage cards have great synergy with Tornado, so you need to have it in your deck for sure. Since Tornado is weak against log bait decks, another small spell is needed. Now, you can use the log or zap if you want, but the Goblin Barrel is the best choice for the second small spell. The reason for that is that the Goblin Barrel can also tank for your graveyard. To make your defense even stronger, you also need a good building in your deck. Graveyard decks usually run either Tombstone, Cannon, Goblin Hut or Bomb Tower. Choose one of these. One important thing to note is that you shouldn't use expensive splash damage cards with expensive buildings. These will make your deck slow and you won't be able to use your graveyard often, so opt for a good balance amongst your defensive cards. Your final card should be a spell. Poison and Freeze are the 2 best spells to use with a graveyard. Poison destroys troops trying to defend against your graveyard. Freeze spell? Well, it just freezes them while your graveyard skeletons kill them. You can use a Fireball too, but Poison and Freeze just synergize better with the Graveyard. Golem. The Golem is a heavy 8 elixir tank. Usually Golem decks tend to be a bit expensive. As a Golem player, you'll want to defend lightly and focus more on building a huge push. To build an unstoppable Golem push, you need to have strong support cards. To support your Golem from the ground, cards like Night Witch, Lumberjack, Battle Healer, Mini P.E.K.K.A or Dark Prince are preferred. These cards are supposed to deal heavy damage from behind while your Golem tanks for them. Use 2 of these cards in your deck. For air support, you will need a mini air tank that can deal good damage. Cards like Baby Dragon, Electro Dragon, Skeleton Dragon, Phoenix, or even a Mega Minion work great with Golem. These cards can support your Golem as well as help on defense. You can use 1 or 2 of these cards. If you play a golem, you can get punished easily. To defend the opponent's pushes lightly, you need a cheap defensive card. This card will minimize the damage you take for less elixir, and you can focus on building your golem push. Cards like Bomber, Guards, or Ice Wizard are perfect for this role. When it comes to spells, golem decks will run 2 to 3 spells. Small spells like Goblin Barrel, Zap, and Arrows are good choices. You can also use the Tornado if you have support troops that deal good splash damage. Use 1 to 2 small spells. For big spells, Lightning and Fireball are the best options since they deal instant damage. Alternatively, you can also run an Elixir Collector instead of a big spell if your deck is getting way too expensive. Use either one big spell or an Elixir Collector. One important rule is to always have a card in your golem deck that can reset Infernos and Sparky, so make sure you're always carrying one of either Electro Dragon, Zap, or Lightning. Elixir Golem. The Elixir Golem is a 3 elixir win condition. It's quite a tricky one since it gives elixir to your opponent when destroyed, so you need to build a really aggressive deck so that your opponent always overcommits elixir on defense. First of all, you need heavy damage dealing support cards. Night Witch, Goblin Machine, Skeleton King, and Elite Barbarians are great for this purpose. You can also add a battle healer so that your push becomes harder to kill. Use 3 of these cards in your deck. To counter air, you only need 1 card. Since Elixir Golem decks are all about offense, don't worry about adding too much defense in your deck. Cards like Witch, Electro Dragon, or Archers fit this role nicely. Use the evolved version of these cards if you have it. Elixir Golem decks rely on building dual lane pushes in double elixir. So for that, you need a cheap cycle card like Skeletons, Bat, or Bomber. This can also be your second evolved card. For small spells, Arrows, Goblin Curse, and Rage Spell are popular options. You can use 2 of them to complete your deck. Goblin Giant. The Goblin Giant is a 6 elixir win condition which carries 2 spear goblins on its back. Goblin Giant decks are highly aggressive decks with little to no defense. To make a good Goblin Giant deck, you need to have cards that can end the game in one push. So think of cards like P.E.K.K.A, Sparky, Prince, Mini P.E.K.K.A, Elite Barbarians, Boss Bandit, or Goblin Machine. All of these pair very well with a Goblin Giant. You will need 3 of these cards in your deck. To deal with air threats, Goblin Giant decks run mostly a single air defensive card. This card can be either Mega Minion, Phoenix, Electro Wizard, or even Hunter. While playing Goblin Giant, you need to cycle to your aggressive cards fast. So having a cycle card like Heal Spirit, Bats, Skeletons, or Bomber is also very necessary. Use 1 of these cards. If you're using Goblin Giant decks, then Rage, Arrows, Zap are the best choices for small spells, while Fireball and Lightning are the only 2 good options for a big spell. You can either run 2 small spells or 1 small spell and 1 big spell with a Goblin Giant. Xbow. The Xbow is a 6 elixir siege win condition. That means you can attack your opponent's towers from your side of the arena if you place it near the bridge. Now, this makes Xbow a super important card and therefore protecting it is really necessary. So the whole deck needs to be built accordingly. Tesla is a must-have card in your Xbow deck. The reason for that is because Tesla occupies a 2x2 tiled space in the arena, so this makes it perfect for protecting the Xbow because no other buildings can be placed in front of the Xbow. Now, you need a mini tank to protect both the Xbow and Tesla. A Knight or Valkyrie are considered the best for this role. They're not that costly and can counter most ground cards. Xbow can struggle against beatdown decks, so having a card that can quickly take down tanks is much needed in your deck. Cards like Archers and Musketeers are used with Xbow to fulfill this role. You can also use Ice Wizard, but then you need to combine him with Tornado too. Xbow decks carry mostly 2 spells, 1 big spell to spell cycle in double and triple elixir, and 1 small spell to take care of swarms. For big spells, Rocket and Fireball are the 2 best options, and in case of small spells, the Log, Tornado, or Snowball are preferred, although Arrows won't be too bad either. And finally, since Xbow decks are supposed to be super fast, you need not 1, but 2 cycle cards to get back to your Xbow quickly. Use either Skeletons or Goblins to tank critical hit, and choose 1 from either of the spirits except the Healed Spirit. Hog Rider. The Hog Rider is a fast 4 elixir win condition with decent hit points and heavy damage. Hog decks are usually quite fast since the main goal is to outcycle your opponent's counters. To defend against ground threats and to tank for the Hog Rider, you will need a mini tank. Valkyrie, Knight, Mighty Miner, or even a Golden Knight are a good fit for this role. You can also use an Ice Golem since it's really useful in kiting troops to the other lane. Use one of these cards. Buildings are necessary for Hog Rider decks, else you're a toast against beatdown. Buildings like Cannon, Goblin Hut, Bomb Tower, and Tesla are preferred with Hog Rider decks. Use one of these buildings. You'll also need to have a reliable card which can deal with both air and ground cards and help on defense. Firecracker, Musketeer, Archer, Queen, or Executioner can be used. Pick any one of these cards for your deck. Since Hog Rider decks are supposed to be quite fast, you need 2 cheap cycle cards. Use one of either Ice Spirit or Electro Spirit, and one of either Skeletons or Goblins. Hog Rider decks are quite versatile, therefore you can use most spells with them. For big spells, I'd recommend Fireball and Earthquake, but you can also use Lightning or even Rocket. But don't use Poison, since it's too slow. As for the small spell, the Log, Arrows, and Snowball are great choices. Use any one of them to complete your deck. Electro Giant. The Electro Giant is a 7 elixir tank that stuns and deals damage to any enemy troop in its range. Electro Giant decks are usually heavy and rely on getting your Electro Giant to the tower anyhow. Since Electro Giant is a beatdown card, you'll need good support behind it. Golden Knight, Dark Prince, and Bowler synergize really well with the Electro Giant. Use any 1 or 2 of these cards in your deck. To deal with air troops, you only need a single card since the Electro Giant is a great counter to air troops in itself. Cards like Phoenix, Baby Dragon, Inferno Dragon fit this role perfectly. A building card is also necessary for defense, since Electro Giant decks don't run many defensive troops. A building like Cannon, Goblin Cage, or Goblin Hut can be a good choice. Use your evolved versions if you have them. To deal with swarms and to cycle cards efficiently, you need to have cheap cards in your decks. Think of cards like Barbarian Barrel, Fire Spirit, Skeletons, and Bomber, or even Guards. Use 1 or 2 of these cards. Now when it comes to spells, you're forced to use 2 particular spells. You have to use both the Lightning and Tornado in your deck. Lightning can help destroy the enemy's defensive buildings and take care of Infernos, while the Tornado is super helpful to pull your opponent's troops towards your Electro Giant so that he can destroy them easily. Lava Hound. The Lava Hound is a 7 elixir air tank win condition. When destroyed, it bursts into little lava pups. Lava Hound deck are really strong on offense and usually quite heavy. Since the Lava Hound deals very low damage by itself, you'll always need a second win condition in your deck. The Balloon is the best win condition to pair with the Lava Hound, followed by the Miner. You can either have one of them or both in your deck. Lava Hound decks also run 2 extra air cards to build a strong push. Cards like Inferno Dragon, Skeleton Dragon, Phoenix, Mega Minion, or the Flying Machine are usually paired with the Lava Hound. Use 2 of these cards while building your deck. For ground defense, Lava Hound decks will either run a mini tank plus swarm card or a mini tank plus building. You can use either one of Valkyrie, Knight, or Barbarians to fulfill the role of a mini tank. For buildings, it's advised to use only Tombstone or Goblin Cage, since these buildings are great at stopping punishing cards like Prince or Mini P.E.K.K.A. As for swarms, you can have Guards, Goblin Gang, or Skeletons. You can also use the Bomber instead. Personally, I prefer the building plus mini tank combination. Finally, for spells, you can't use any spell which is either too slow or attacks only ground cards. So that leaves us with only 2 options for big spells, Fireball and Lightning. Use any one in your deck. For small spells, you can use a Zap, Arrows, or Snowball. If you have the evolved version of these spells, make sure to use it. Ram Rider. The Ram Rider is a 5 elixir win condition that charges towards towers while immobilizing enemy troops. Ram Rider decks are the most aggressive decks in the game, where you spam cards on the bridge. Ram Rider is not that difficult to counter on her own, so you need an aggressive tank in front of her. An aggressive tank is something with a lot of HP, but which deals a lot of damage too. So cards like P.E.K.K.A., Mega Knight, or Boss Bandit are a must-have in Ram Rider decks. Choose any one of them. As I said earlier, Ram Rider decks are bridge spam decks, so you need cards which can deploy on the bridge frequently. These cards, despite not being too expensive, will always force out a response from your opponent. So think of cards like Bandit, Royal Ghost, Dark Prince, or even Guards. Use 2 of these cards in your deck. Since Ram Rider decks rely on heavy ground offense, you don't need super strong air defense. A single card like Executioner, Archer Queen, Inferno Dragon, Firecracker, or an Electro Wizard should be more than enough. Use the evolution of these cards if you have them. Because most of your ground cards are meant to be used on offense, you also need something for light ground defense and for cycling cards fast. So, cards like Skeletons, Goblin Barrel, or Guards can be a good fit. Use one of these cards in your deck. Ram Rider decks pair really well with Lightning as it can one-shot buildings. This can help your Ram Rider get a charge on the tower. Alternatively, you can also use a Fireball as your big spell. As for the small spell, you can use basically any with Ram Rider decks, although Snowball and Arrows are the top options. Goblin Barrel. The Goblin Barrel is a 3 elixir win condition which spawns 3 goblins and can be deployed anywhere in the arena. Goblin Barrel decks are called spell bait decks because their goal is to bait out the opponent's spells so that the Goblin Barrel can get damage. To bait out small spells from your opponent, you first need a variety of swarm cards. Cards like Goblin Gang, Guards, Skeleton Army, or even Wall Breakers are great to bait out small spells. Consider using 1 to 3 such cards in your deck. Now, you need squishy ranged cards, which can also bait out spells. These cards also need to attack air, else your deck's air defense will become weak. Princess, Dart Goblin, and Firecracker are the best options. Princess is a must-use in the deck, considering how annoying she is. You can use 1 to 3 such ranged cards. Adding a mini tank in your deck can help you with ground defense as well as tank for your Goblin Barrel. Knight, Valkyrie, Dark Prince, and Mighty Miner are the best cards to fit this role. Use one of these cards in your deck. Consider using a Spirit card for a fast cycle. Ice Spirit is the best option out of the 4. Not only can it provide you with a faster cycle, but it can also be used as a small tank for your Goblin Barrel. A building card is necessary for bait decks too. Although I would say it's not mandatory, still it's considered a safe option to use a building like Cannon, Inferno Dragon, Tesla, or Bomb Tower to defend against beatdown decks. Having a small spell is mandatory in bait decks to deal with swarms cards. The Log and Arrows are the best spells to use with a spell bait. And finally, you need a big spell to finish off games as it can be hard to get damage in double and triple elixir. Rocket is the #1 choice for this, although you can skip the big spell and add another swarm card to apply even more pressure. Battle Ram. The Battle Ram is a 4 elixir win condition, which charges towards the tower. When it's destroyed, it spawns 2 barbarians. To build a Battle Ram deck, you need highly aggressive cards, but also decent defense. So, to have a good blend of both, you first need an aggressive tank in your deck. This tank can attack, defend, and will always force your opponents to make a mistake. P.E.K.K.A and Mega Knight are the best choices for this, but you can also use the Boss Bandit. To apply pressure on the bridge, you need 2 aggressive spam cards. Bandit, Dark Prince, Royal Ghost, or even Lumberjack are good for this role. These cards can bait out a specific response from your opponent so that your Battle Ram can get a tower connection. For air defense, you will need at least 2 cards. You can choose from cards like Electro Wizard, Magic Archer, Musketeer, Minions, Mother Witch, Little Prince, or even the Archer Queen. There's a lot of choices and you just need 2 of them, so choose according to your levels and personal preference. You need a big spell to finish games and deal damage to troops and buildings. Mostly all big spells work with Battle Ram except Rocket, so you can have one of either Fireball, Poison, or Lightning. For a small spell, Zap is the best option, but you can also use Arrows or the Log to take care of swarm units. Mortar! The Mortar is a 4 elixir siege win condition which attacks enemy towers from the bridge. Mortar decks are usually really spammy to annoy the opponent. Most Mortar decks need to have at least 3 swarm cards. These cards force your opponent to get into negative elixir trades on defense so that your Mortar has a higher chance of getting a tower connection. Goblin Gang, Bats, Spear Goblins, Skeleton Barrel, Guards, or Skeleton Army can be used for this role. Use 3 of these cards in your deck. A Miner is a super useful card to have in your deck because it acts as a second win condition. Mortar games can go for quite a long time, so having a Miner in your deck allows you to get damage faster. Also, it synergizes really well with all the swarms used in Mortar decks. It's not a must-have card, but it's advised to always run a miner with Mortar. Now, you need something to defend air cards. Musketeer, Firecracker and Ice Wizard are often seen in Mortar decks since they're cheap and do the job pretty well. You require 2 tanks at least in your deck to defend your Mortar and also apply offensive pressure. Skeleton King is a good choice since his ability is complemented by all the swarms. But if you don't have him, you can also use Cannon Cart, Knight, Valkyrie, Goblin Stein or Goblin Machine. Use 2 of these cards in your deck. As for the spells, follow this simple rule. If you're running a Mortar deck with a miner, use only a small spell like arrows or the log. But if you're not playing the miner, you also need a big spell like rocket, lightning or fireball in your deck. Goblin Drill. The Goblin Drill is a 4 elixir win condition that burrows underground and can appear anywhere in the arena. Usually, you will always want to deploy your Goblin Drill directly on the opponent's tower. Goblin Drill decks are always quite fast in cycle, so keep that in mind while building your deck. First of all, you need a mini tank in your deck. This mini tank can soak hits from the tower while your Goblin Drill deals damage. Knight, Valkyrie, Mighty Miner, or Golden Knight are great examples. Use one of these cards in your deck. Now, you need 2 cycle cards to make your deck extremely fast. Ice Spirit, Fire Spirit, Bomber, Guards and Skeletons are the best choices. Use any 2 of them. Since the opponent has to drop troops extremely close to their towers to defend the Goblin Drill, having a splash damage card in your deck can make the defense extremely difficult for them. Cards like Goblin Demolisher, Magic Archer, Bomber pair really well with the Goblin Drill. Make sure to have one of these cards in your deck. You also need a building card to defend on your side of the arena. Tesla, Goblin Hut, and Cannon are top choices. You can also use the Bomber Tower if you really want. Goblin Drill decks usually either run 2 small spells or 1 big spell and 1 small spell. Fireball and Poison are the only 2 good choices for a big spell since other big spells will make the deck expensive. Snowball and the Log are mainly preferred for the small spells, but you can also use arrows. Always use 2 spells with Goblin Drill decks. Giant. The Giant is a 5 elixir tank and that acts as a beatdown win condition. Giant decks require punishing the opponents at the right moment, so Giant decks are always built around punishing cards. Cards like Prince, Dark Prince, Lumberjack, Bowler, Sparky, Boss Bandit, Mini P.E.K.K.A. or Goblin Machine are the best to pair with the Giant. Additionally, you can also build a Giant graveyard deck where the graveyard in itself serves this purpose. You need to have at least 2 punishing cards in your Giant deck. To defend against air threats, Giant decks often use Witch, Archers, Minions, Musketeer, Mega Minion, or the Electro Wizard. Having 1 or 2 of these cards in your deck helps you deal against air threats. You also need to have a light defensive unit that can defend pushes efficiently, since you don't want to waste your main offensive cards on defense, so having cards like Bomber, Guards, Goblin Gang, or Skeleton Army can fulfill that role. Pick one of these for your deck. Giant decks always run 2 small spells, since its offense is weak against swarms, so spells like Rage, Arrows, Zap and Snowball are a must-have in your deck. Now, if your deck is still incomplete, you can also add a big spell too, like Fireball or Lightning, which should complete your deck. Royal Hogs. The Royal Hogs are a 5 elixir swarm win condition. They are fast and quick at dealing damage. Royal Hogs decks are usually fast cycle decks, but there also exists a Royal Recruits version which you can play. But here we talk about the Royal Hogs cycle decks, since those are not that easy to build. Royal Hog decks are supposed to be really fast so that you can outcycle your opponent's counters. You'll first need a card that can counter air, since Royal Hogs decks can be weak against air. Cards like Archer Queen, Musketeer, Firecracker, or the Witch can be great for this job. Now, you need cheap cycle cards in your deck to make it fast. There's nothing better than Skeletons and Ice Spirit to use with Royal Hogs, but you can additionally also use any other spirits or goblin cards if you really want. Always have 2 cycle cards in your deck. Since defense is not that easy while playing Royal Hogs, having a building in your deck can be useful. Buildings like Cannon, Goblin Hut, Tesla or even Bomb Tower are good choices. Have at least 1 building in your deck. Royal Hogs decks will always run 2 to 3 spells. The Log, Royal Delivery, Arrows, Zap, Snowball and Earthquake can be used as small spells. Use 2 to 3 small spells in your deck. For a big spell, Fireball and Lightning are preferred. You can use one big spell apart from 2 small spells, but don't use more than 3 spells at any cost. 3 Musketeers. The 3 Musketeers are the most expensive win condition in Clash Royale, costing 9 Elixir. 3 Musketeers decks are usually dual lane pressure decks, so you need offensive cards in your deck. First of all, you need bridge spam cards for your deck. Bandit, Royal Ghost, Dark Prince, Elite Barbarians, Golden Knight, Lumberjack, and Prince are preferred options. You need to have 3 of these cards in your decks. Now, you need something to defend air threats apart from your 3 Musketeers, so pick one card out of Archers, Dart Goblin, Wizard, or Hunter to use in your deck. Adding a secondary win condition can be useful since 3 Musketeers don't directly go for the tower like other win conditions. Instead, they focus on building good elixir trades, so having a second win condition like Battle Ram, Miner, or Wall Breakers can be really helpful. A spell like Goblin Barrel, Log, or Arrows can help clear the way for your aggressive cards, so make sure to have one of these cards in your deck. And finally, you definitely need an elixir collector in your deck. 3 Musketeers cost a whopping 9 elixir, and without an elixir collector, you'll never be able to build a big dual lane push. Balloon! The Balloon is a heavy damage dealing 5 elixir win condition. There are many types of Balloon decks. We've discussed Lava Loon already. The second one is Lumberloon Freeze, which is this exact deck. But the third and most popular one is Balloon Cycle. To build this deck, you need to have 2 mini tanks in your deck. A Miner is a must-have for this since he synergizes really well with a balloon. The second mini tank can be one of Ice Golem or Knight. To deal with air, cards like Musketeer, Wizard, Mega Minion, or Inferno Dragon can help. Use 1 or 2 of these cards in your deck to build a strong air defense. A building card is necessary as balloon decks are quite skillful and don't have much to defend with. A building card like Bomb Tower, Tesla, or Goblin Cage can make things easier on defense for you. Have at least 1 building in your Balloon Cycle deck. Having a small spell to take care of swarms is important. Spells like Zap, Snowball, or Goblin Barrel can do a good job for this. So carry 1 or 2 small spells in your deck. If there is still a spot remaining in your deck, then fill it with cheap cycle cards like Skeletons or Goblins to tank for critical hits. Wall Breakers! The Wall Breakers are a fast 2 elixir win condition. They go straight for the tower and explode, dealing heavy damage. While there are multiple variations of Wall Breakers decks, we'll talk about the most versatile version, Wall Breakers Cycle. Wall Breakers Cycle rely on a secondary win condition. A card like Miner or Goblin Drill has the best synergy with Wall Breakers, so have 1 of them in your deck to maximize your chances of getting damage. Having a building card is necessary to defend against beatdown decks. Consider choosing 1 from Cannon, Tesla, or Bomb Tower. A mini tank can help you both on offense and defense. Cards like Valkyrie, Knight, Mighty Miner, and Boss Bandit are often paired with Wall Breakers. You can pick any one of these to use in your deck. A combination of a big and small spell is necessary as getting a Wall Breaker connection is rare. Fireball and Poison are great choices for big spell, while the Log, Snowball, and Zap can fulfill the role of a small spell. Wall Breakers decks don't usually carry heavy air defense, but I would still recommend you to carry at least 1 air counter. Bats, Spear Goblins, Firecracker, Dart Goblin, or Musketeer can help you deal with air troops as well as ground cards. As the final card of your deck, you can have a cycle deck to make your Wall Breakers deck faster. Consider adding any spirit card or skeletons for this slot. Skeleton Barrel. The Skeleton Barrel is a 3 elixir flying win condition. When it pops, it drops a horde of skeletons on the ground. Skeleton Barrel decks are usually spell bait decks, which rely on baiting out the spells from your opponent. First of all, you need a heavy card that can apply pressure on offense as well as defend efficiently. 2 cards are often seen in Skeleton Barrel decks, Mega Knight and Royal Recruits. Use any one of them in your deck. Next, you need squishy cards which can do a lot of damage if not taken care of. This will force your opponent to use a spell on them. Goblin Gang, Bats, Wall Breakers, Spear Goblins, Guards, Dart Goblin, or Firecrackers are the best cards for this. Use any 3 of these cards in your deck. A card like Miner and Mighty Miner is useful in Skeleton Barrel decks. These cards can tank for the skeletons from the barrel when it pops. so try to have one of these 2 cards in your deck as well. To counter air, you will need a card that is cheap and annoying because that's what this deck is all about. Inferno Dragon, Firecracker or Dart Goblin can be used for this slot. These can also perform the additional function of baiting out a spell. And finally, you need a spell in your deck. Since you're probably already running a miner, you don't need a big spell. Instead, aim for a small spell like Zap, the Log, or Arrows. Have one of these to complete your deck. Miner! The Miner is a 3 elixir win condition that can burrow underground and appear anywhere in the arena. Perhaps the most versatile win condition in the game, Miner has tons of decks around it, but we'll focus on the one that's been around for years, Miner Poison Cycle. So as the name suggests, Poison is a must-have in the deck. The other spell you can carry is the Log or Zap. You can also use Tornado. Miner decks always need a mini-tank. Valkyrie, Knight, Mighty Miner, Golden Knight are used often with Miner. Pick any one of them. A secondary win condition is always necessary because the Miner doesn't deal much damage alone, and for this slot, I'd advise you use only the Wall Breakers since they're cheap and synergize perfectly with a Miner. To defend air, you can have an air counter like a Musketeer or Magic Archer in your deck. If you're using a Magic Archer, make sure to also run the Tornado since their synergy is top tier. Now, you need a building in your deck. It's a must-have because else the defenses can become a bit tricky. Bomb Tower, Tesla, Goblin Hut, Cannon, or even the Inferno Tower are all good choices. Pick any one of them for your deck. Finally, complete your deck with a Swarm card which can help you bait out spells. This way, your wall breakers can find it easier to connect with a tower. Bats, Spear Goblins, or Goblin Gang are useful for this role. Suspicious Bush. The Suspicious Bush is a 2 elixir invisible win condition. It only becomes visible when hit by a spell or it reaches a building or tower. Suspicious Bush decks are the fastest decks in the game, and they follow the spell bait rules too. Cheap cards like Ice Spirit, Fire Spirit, Spear Goblins, Dart Goblins, Goblin Gang, and Skeletons are necessary to include. Have at least 3 such cards in your deck. Wall Breakers are another important card in a Suspicious Bush deck since they can force your opponent to decide whether they want to defend the Wall Breakers or the Suspicious Bush. A champion card is needed so that you can use its 3-card cycle to get back to your Suspicious Bush faster. Consider using Boss Bandit or a Mighty Miner for this slot. To counter air, you need a squishy card that can deal quick damage, but also bait out spells. Therefore, Dart Goblin and Firecracker are the 2 best choices. Use any one of them in your deck. Finish building your deck by adding a small spell like the Log, Arrows, or Snowball. Every win condition is unique in itself, but sometimes some are stronger than the others. If you want to know which win conditions are trending right now, click on this video